Hey guys, welcome to the lecture on the government's goal of full employment. Now before we get into the idea of the goal, we're going to look at the definitions of employment and unemployment first. So let's start off with employment. This is defined as broadly someone 15 years and over, who wants work and has work. So you need to be someone who wants work and also having the work at the same time. And so work can be broadly categorized as 1 hour or more of paid work in the past week. It can also be classified as 1 hour or more of unpaid work at a family business. So this can be a farm or just a traditional family business of any sort. It can also mean you have not worked for the past 4 weeks at most, but you have a job. And lastly, you have not worked for the past 4 weeks at most, but you are self-employed. So this can be a contractor or a tradie or someone of that sort. So that's the definition of employment. It's someone who's 15 years and over who wants work and has work. So someone who's worked 1 hour or more of paid work, 1 hour more of unpaid work in the past week, having not worked for the past 4 weeks at most, but you still have a job, and this can be due to strikes or industry reasons or sick leave. You have not worked for the past 4 weeks at most, but you are also self-employed. So that's the definition of unemployment. Now the definition of unemployment, sorry, that was the definition of employment. Sometimes these two words get confusing. Unemployment now is someone who is actively seeking for work but cannot find one. And this means if they are actively seeking for work, then they are ready to take up any job immediately if they get it. So that's the definition of employment and unemployment. So with that in mind, we're going to move on to the actual goal of full employment. What the goal of full employment entails. Okay, so let's look at the goal of full employment. What does full employment mean? It means the lowest rate of cyclical or natural unemployment that should occur. Let's just rub all this out before we write stuff down. Okay. The goal of full employment. As defined by the government, it means the lowest rate of unemployment that will not cause acceleration inflation to accelerate. And this is very important because inflation is the main government goal, because inflation affects all the other government goals. And so what this means is that at this point there would also be no cyclical unemployment due to insufficient aggregate demand. But the government realizes that some natural unemployment may still exist. And we'll talk about natural and cyclical unemployment and the difference between these two in a further lecture. But what this means is that there is no cyclical unemployment due to insufficient demand. So if we take a look at the aggregate demand and aggregate supply curves, we have inflation here and output here. And we know we have the short run aggregate supply due to the inert rate of inflation and the long run aggregate supply curve here. And we have a downward sloping aggregate demand curve. So this is where the economy is at equilibrium, where inflation is full, employment is full at Y star, which is potential output. So with the current resources available, that's the potential output the economy can achieve, and this is when full employment is achieved. If we shift the curve to the left, to this point here, and when the economy is producing at Y dash dash, this is actually called a contractionary gap. And this means that cyclical unemployment is greater than 0. Call that 0% rather. So here, because there is insufficient demand, there will be a cyclical unemployment gap or contractionary gap. And by contrast, if you move it here, aggregate demand will be excessive, say call this Y dash, and there will be an expansionary gap. And what this means is that labor resources overutilized, and therefore you're working overtime, and therefore cyclical unemployment is less than 0. And logically speaking, this can't really be less than 0, but it can. If you think that because firms are so demanding of labor, because they need so much labor to satisfy the aggregate demand or the excessive aggregate demand, they're going to start hiring those who are naturally unemployed. So those who don't have the necessary qualifications, that may deteriorate the quality of the goods and services that we produce. Also, they may overwork current labor, and therefore some who are underutilized at the moment will move towards full utilization of their labor resource. And we'll talk about the concept of underutilization later on. But that's the government goal of full employment. It means the lowest rate of unemployment that will not cause inflation to accelerate. And this is also called the NIRU. So the non-accelerating inflationary rate of unemployment. And so here at this point, there will be no cyclical unemployment due to insufficient aggregate demand, but the government accepts that some natural employment will still exist. And this is typically around 5%. Okay, so that's the government goal of full employment. Let's move on to see how the full employment, or the achievement of full employment, will affect other government goals.